Hello, I am someone who is highly interested in progress, or the human ascent, if you would prefer to name it like this. Anyway, there's obviously some kind of progress that human beings are making, sometimes at the expense of other lives, human beings, animals, or even plants. But how could we accelerate this, progress? This is something which is highly interesting for me. And I would tend to think that if human beings were in our current civilization, if we were really intelligent enough, we would save, many lives. We would save the lives of even other species like, animals. But we are not that kind of intelligent, unfortunately. So how could we improve this? How could we accelerate, our ability to improve the system, for instance? And how could we make the maximum use of our minds? There are people who say that all what we see, around us is kind of the product of a mental activity, whether it's human or not. I'm not interested in this question. I'm interested in developing what we already have. So what I'm going to talk about right now is concerned with a few words that we hear and we use a lot in our everyday language without thinking thoroughly enough about them, as I think, of course. And these words are memory, reading, and intelligence, which are highly interrelated, as I think, of course. To start with memory, I would say that we have always to differentiate between a short-term memory and a long-term memory. And for information to be well stored into your memory, they have to pass from the short-term memory into the long-term memory. And unless you work further on information stored into your short-term memory, this kind of information is going to be lost. And people usually go through different techniques, including repetition or linking information with previously stored information to be able to process them. Anyway, I'm talking now on the personal level, but on the social or cultural level, you're learning sometimes even though you're not willing to, because your culture is repeating certain things at certain times, and that's how you're learning. And these two processes, the social and the personal, they are interacting with each other. This means that your culture is influencing what and how you learn, and you are capable of influencing your culture and what and how you learn, and even how fast. Your culture is influencing how fast you learn things, and you can influence how fast you learn or other people learn from their culture. But this would require high levels of intelligence, which I'm going to talk about later. Unfortunately, many universities in the world until now, they are testing their students according to what they can store in their short-term memory. And this is kind of deceiving, because students are going to forget information already stored in their short-term memory. They are not going to be there forever. They are going to be lost unless they work further on them on their own. Moving to talk about reading, I would say that reading means decoding, means interpreting, and even deciphering. And people have different capacities to read, And if we ask a certain group of people to read a certain novel, for instance, they're going to interpret it in different ways, okay? And they are going to read much or less according to their ages, to their sexes, and to their previously stored information in their long-term memory. There might be influences, like, by your short-term memory. If you read a novel after having, heard something, so you're going to pay attention, but this is not like, the impact your long-term memory would give, because the most influential, factor here is your long-term memory, which is going to influence how and what you read and the amount of information you get from reading this novel, for instance. This is on the personal level of it, or on the part of the reader, I would say. But if we talk about an external level, for instance, an external factor, which might be the author, for instance, here we can talk about one-dimensional, encoding, two-dimensional encoding, or more, and this means that some authors, that they use several or multi-level encoding. For instance, if you read Crime and Punishment as a teenager, you're going to get less information in comparison when reading it when you are an old man, for instance. But if you have some kind of historical Russian information, okay, so you're going to get more information from this novel. If you have some philosophical information, you're going to get even more. If you have read Nietzsche before reading Crime and Punishment, you're going to get information that those who didn't read Nietzsche would never grasp. Right? Moving to talk about intelligence, this big word, which relies too much on the other human capacities, including memory and reading. But I would say the key word here is relative significance. And this means to be able to select, the information you need in a certain context at a certain time. So it's a question of what, when, and where. However, you might, find certain websites, some programs that they promise you to improve that they accelerate your reading capabilities, for instance. But I would say that, okay, but what kind of capacities they aim at improving? For instance, those which are concerned with acceleration of reading capacities, I would say that most of them, if not all of them, they are actually improving your capacity to store information into your short-term memory. But are you going to benefit from this information? This is the question. Of course, the system is going to benefit from it, but I would not advocate these kind of jobs, which in which a human being is viewed as a machine. So here you are viewed as a machine, and and information they are going through your head, your memory, and those people they are trying to pick up those people with higher abilities to grasp information in their short-term memory, even though this kind of information is going to be lost. So this is one ways of how we are developing systems without developing the individual, and that's why I would say that we are having crises and sometimes conflicts, and that's why I guess that Jack Fresco, for instance, says that all social systems we have already have, like capitalism, communism, I don't know what, they are like primitive initiatives, endeavors to find, to adapt the human society with the advance in technology. And this means that our ability to develop things, to technical things, it's much more higher, than our ability to improve social systems and the individual. So I hope that was a little bit beneficial for you. Rethink about these words that we hear so often in our everyday language, but thinking enough, is it going to improve anything? If you think, you already use what you already have, but you you need to, to get certain information, and this is going to be got only by functional reading. And functional reading is to know what you're looking for, and to read, and your ability to select what you read, which relies on certain types of intelligence. So it's not reading whatever you have, or which might be at a certain stage you might read the books you have on your shelves, on your parents, library, I would say. But this cannot be beneficial in the long run. You have to read things that they pertain to your to the knowledge you're seeking, and in this way this information is going to be beneficial for you or more vital. So rethink about these words, but try to find what's more appropriate and what's more beneficial for you. Goodbye.